team that gets gassed up every single offseason. The Los Angeles Chargers, it's always going to be their year, and somehow they always seem to disappoint. Although this draft is looking pretty good. Am I right, Tony?
I mean, they filled needs with good players, so it's just a matter of Justin Herbert, continuing to develop and taking the team to the next level.
Yeah, and speaking of those good players that went early to them, Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle from Northwestern, what were your thoughts on the conversation between him and Penei Sewell?
In my opinion, it was never close. My board, it was never close. Sewell was head and shoulders above Rashawn Slater. Never a question in my mind. I had Rashawn Slater on my guard board, so it'll be interesting to see how he does at left tackle for the Chargers. The Chargers drafted him there specifically to play left tackle. They have a major need at that position. I thought that Slater was a little bit smaller, shorter than I like in a left tackle. Not as strong as I want in a left tackle, more of a zone blocking guard. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think they felt that they got a bargain with Slater. He's got a good amount of upside. We'll just see whether or not he can handle left tackle responsibilities in the NFL.
And speaking of being a little bit smaller for the position, Sante Samuel Jr. ended up being their second-round pick. Do you think that's why he ended up in the mid-second rounds? Because I know a lot of people really liked his game.
As did I. I mean, he's a sensational cornerback. Great bloodlines, obviously. Athletic, terrific downfield cover corner. Guy with outstanding ball skills, but he's not tall. And that is an issue for a lot of teams. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to develop as a starter. But in the worst case scenario, I think the Chargers got themselves a real good nickel back late in round, or in the middle of round 2, I should say.
Yeah, and then in round 3, they had 2 picks here. They went with Josh Palmer, the Tennessee wide receiver, and then they went with Trey McKitty, the Georgia tight end.
Pair of SEC pass catchers. Palmer, as I wrote, I believe the Monday before the draft, was making a big move up boards. Went where a lot of people said he would in the 3rd round. Fact is Palmer coming in the season was given top 100 grades, but he didn't produce in 2020. A lot of that lack of production was due to the awful quarterback play that we saw at Tennessee because they could never get the position in order. Palmer's big, he's sure-handed, he's got good short area quickness, he's able to separate through routes as well as just beat down the opponents. He's not a downfield pass catcher, but he's very reliable and another target for Justin Herbert. As far as McKitty's concerned, similar situation, a guy who made a late charge up draft boards, ran relatively well during the 2nd Georgia Pro Day. He's got excellent size, showed himself to be a real good pass catcher during the season as well as at the Senior Bowl, showed himself to be a real good blocker during the Senior Bowl. So again, I mean, I was surprised he went this high. I was surprised he went this early as far as the list of, or where he landed as far as some of the other tight ends are concerned. But someone who I think could eventually develop into a starter in the NFL level.
And then in round 4, they went with Chris Rumph, the Duke edge rusher, outside linebacker.
Undersized guy, but, a situational pass rusher who I think, I don't know if he's ever going to develop into a consistent starter, but he gets up the field. He makes a lot of plays with his head. He makes a lot of plays with technique. He's going to have to get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, but you bring him in to rush the pass on 3rd down situations.
Yeah, and then in the 5th round, they went with Brandon James, the offensive tackle from Nebraska.
Offensive tackle or probably an offensive guard in the NFL, which is where I think he's better suited, sort of like Slater, I should say. A guy who is a tough slug-it-out player, someone who had a real good pro day, someone who was more athletic than given credit for, and a real mean, nasty guy, someone who does the little things well at the offensive line position, which is why I think he'll make it in the NFL.
Yeah, and then in round 6, they went with Nick Niemann, the Iowa inside linebacker, and Larry Roundtree, the 3rd, the Missouri running back.
Niemann is someone who I believe was one of the more underrated linebackers in the draft. He was someone, if you watched Iowa the past 2 years, he was constantly around the ball making positive plays, got excellent depth. Then he went into his pro day, as we reported on Pro Football Network, and just blew it up. I mean, just had some massive numbers and went from undrafted free agent to, early 6th round pick. He's a 3-down linebacker. I don't know if he's going to develop if he's going to be a starter early on, but he's someone who's got starting potential down the road. With Roundtree, I think they got a guy who could be a good situational ball carrier in the NFL. He's faster and quicker than given credit for. He's a solid interior runner. He's a tough ball carrier. He's also a good pass catcher out of the backfield.
Yeah, and then they finished their draft off by going with Mark Webb, the safety from Georgia.
Guy who's shown flashes, someone who's got good size, someone who can play over the slot receiver and cover. He's also a real good run defender.
Yeah, and they were pretty active in the undrafted free agent game. Were there any names that really stood out to you from that?
I mean, the one guy who really stood out, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his last name, is Niemann, the linebacker from Oklahoma State. I think it'll be interesting to see what he does or where they play him since they drafted Nick Niemann in the 6th round. I think he's more of an inside run and chase pursuit linebacker, really best making plays up the field. In the very least, I could see him making a roster as a special teams Niemann.
All right, Tony, once again, thank you. This was the Los Angeles Chargers draft reaction.